Hello, Teresa, and hello to participants out in the world in the future. My name is Susan. I work at Headspace Joondalup as the Community Engagement Officer, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Zach. My pronouns are she, him, his. I am currently a member on the youth reference group for Headspace Joondalup.
And my name is Harish. I work here as a counselor, and my pronouns are he, him.
Awesome. Okay, so just to get started, I would first of all like to acknowledge that this Youth Week Festival takes place on Noongar Budja. We would like to acknowledge the ownership, and we're grateful for the custodianship of the land, the people who originate from the Whadjuk Nation. We acknowledge traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. We're committed to reconciliation and supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people across the country. Okay, so just quick thing on housekeeping. You can select live captioning, just click the CC button on the screen on Zoom. You can ask questions in the Q&A panel and we'll answer them at the end. And you can also use the chat box. We'll try and keep that up, but sometimes we'll just be moving things around on our screen. When you do participate, please be patient and positive and kind. You can also raise your hand. What part is that? I think that's in the participants button. No? We'll figure out how you can raise your hand. You can also email hello@propel.org.au, and this session is being recorded. So other guidelines, we'd just like to add that this session is intended for general education only. It's not intended and shouldn't be relied on as a substitute for specific mental health advice. And so if you do have a specific situation that you need help with, you can contact your local Headspace Centre or eHeadspace. Also, if you're in a crisis and you need to speak to someone as soon as possible, you can contact Kids Helpline on 1800 55 1800 or Lifeline on 13 11 14. What else I had to add? Today we're speaking about setting boundaries. We're going to be talking about how you identify boundaries, how you talk about them, and we'll be talking through some scenarios as well. Much of the info that we're speaking on today comes from the Origin resource called Brief Interventions in Youth Mental Health Toolkit, and we'll link this in the chat, and we can email it to you afterwards as well, to the registered people. And in that toolkit, there are some worksheets if you wanted to work through some assertive communication skills. Finally, before we get started, I just want to say that we are from Headspace in Joondalup, but Headspace itself is the National Youth Mental Health Foundation, and we're all about free mental health support and education for 12 to 25-year-olds. There's lots of information on the Headspace website, which is headspace.org.au. You can create your own account, you can access eHeadspace counselling, work and study support, and you can find out about your nearest Headspace centre, as there are centres all across the country. And with that all being said, we can get started. I'm just going to stop screen sharing and just have faces at this point. Okay, so I'll also note that we do have notes in front of us because we wanted to be prepared to get into it. And, you know, we've got a lot to cover. And so, yeah, we'll see how we go. So first question is, what are boundaries? Should we take that?
Yeah, sure. So boundaries can be described as a set of guidelines that we can create to look after ourselves. We can have boundaries in different aspects of our lives. We can have boundaries around how much time we spend with others, how we spend our money, our emotional energy, and physical contact. When we don't set healthy boundaries with others, we may end up feeling hurt, resentful, or even burnt out. Having healthy boundaries can protect us from being taken advantage of in our relationships. Expressing our boundaries to others helps them understand what is acceptable and not acceptable to us. This helps us maintain mutual respect for each other. Boundaries differ for every person. They can be influenced by our family environment, our cultural identity, our personal life experiences, and our personality.
So yeah, as we said, different people have different boundaries, and that can vary in different contexts. So for example, some people like hugs and some people don't like hugs. And some people like to hug their close friends and close family members, but not other people like co-workers or acquaintances. And that's okay. Also, your boundaries can change throughout your life, and that this is something that adults can struggle with as well. And every new relationship can come with its own set of challenges and opportunities to set boundaries. All right, next question. So what are some areas in your life where you can set boundaries, Harish?
So yeah, as I was saying earlier, one of the things that happens to all of us, sometimes people may touch us inappropriately, and so our body is an area of our lives where we can exercise our boundaries. Our images, photos, videos, we may or may not want it to be shared on social media, and we have the right to control how it is shared. Our personal space, how close people stand to us, our emotions and thoughts, and other people's emotions and thoughts. We are not obligated to hear or be present for everyone's complaints or disappointments. We can when we want to. Sexual activities, what you're willing to do, with whom, that's also something where you can set boundaries with. Your time, even at work, how much work you want to do, whatever responsibilities that are given to you. That is also something where you may need to exercise some boundaries with. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. So a lot of different contexts. So what are some examples of how you might set a boundary, just in a sentence in day-to-day life? Zach?
There's a few things you could say. You could just be blunt and say no thanks, no thank you. I have this allotted amount of time to help you or see you. You can let people know that you're going to take time to think about it and come back to them. You can just straight up tell people that you can't make it to that event or that thing that they need you to do. You can agree to disagree, respect people's different opinions, and say for someone maybe taking things that are yours and using them without your permission, just tell them to ask you before they use your property.
Great.
Pretty straightforward.
All right, and so I've got here some examples of positive impacts of having healthy boundaries in your life. So by having healthy boundaries, it shows respect for yourself and for others. It can help you feel less overwhelmed or stressed, and it can help you avoid getting burnt out, like becoming, depleting your battery until it's flat. It can give you a greater self-awareness for what your needs are, and you can feel more empowered and in control of your life when you have those boundaries. It can help you improve your communication skills with others, and overall it can help you maintain healthy and respectful relationships with the people in your life. Preparing for this workshop, the youth reference group, we all talked about how sometimes people can feel guilty or selfish or mean because they're setting a boundary. And there are some thoughts behind that for why we might feel that way. So sometimes people worry about, like, if I say how I feel, I might end up being a burden to someone, and I don't want that. If I say how I feel, I might get embarrassed, or people might laugh at me. Someone might think that they're not being man enough or not being like that it shows weakness, and they might worry that it can only make things worse because, you know, we tend to think of the worst case scenario, because we hate to, you know, we try to avoid being in uncomfortable situations. Some people also think that it's just rude or selfish to put your needs above someone else's, by saying what you want. But the fact is that that's not true. So let's also just talk about what are, why is it okay to set boundaries? Like, after thinking all of those negative things about setting boundaries, what are the reasons why it's okay?
All right. So, you know, no one can say yes to absolutely everything. It's not realistic. We all have only so much energy per day. So we need to, you know, allocate that according to what we are capable of. So if we end up spending too much of that energy listening to people or doing things for people, we may not have time and energy for ourselves. Setting boundaries helps teach people around us how we want to be treated, because people may not know that by themselves. And so sometimes it's important that we express ourselves and tell them what we like, what we don't like, how much we like, how much, you know, what we don't like. And people can't read our minds, so it's important that we use our words and tell them what we need.
I am guilty of like just expecting people to know what I'm thinking sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's quite common amongst, you know, humans that we all like to think that everyone is like us and so like the same things, or, you know, but it's not the case. And when it's not expressed, it can lead to conflict.
Just communication, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, like, it's never too late to change expectations. Like, the relationships that we have, they're not like static, still concrete things. They continue to change and evolve as, you know, our lives and our behaviors and our opinions and feelings change over time. And so likewise, you have the ability to change let someone know that you want something to be different, and that's not an impossible thing.
True.
Some other things I want to highlight are the fact that everyone has certain rights when it comes to, you know, your boundaries. And so I hope you'll agree when I say, you know, everyone has the right to change their mind, right? Everyone has the right to disagree with someone's opinion. You have the right to say no. You shouldn't ever have to say yes, because that's not really a choice anymore, is it? You have the right to make mistakes and be responsible for the mistakes that you make, because nobody's perfect and no one does the right thing every single time. And likewise, you know, not everyone knows everything. So you have the right to say, I don't know, I don't understand, I need more information. You also have the right to offer no reasons or excuses to justify your boundaries or your behaviors. You don't have to say, like, no thanks because blah, blah, blah. Like, no is a full sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, so Zach, I wonder if you can tell us a bit about how someone can identify what their boundaries are.
Well, for one, to just be aware of how you feel when a person crosses or does something that may cross a boundary. You realize that you may feel like ignored or not wanted, uncomfortable, exhausted, scared.
Yeah, the first step is to just notice
notice your feelings of the actions that people do, and then you realize that you need to create boundaries from them, potentially. So yeah, basically, what would you want to be different to make this better? What can you do? What can others do? What's the minimum you want? And the best case scenario in that example.
Great. Okay, cool. So now getting into the next bit about the how-to part of setting boundaries. So the way that we communicate with other people can often depend on the situation that we're in and what emotions we're feeling. But sometimes, you know, if someone has done something and it makes you feel angry, And if you react with anger, for example, that can end up making the situation worse, or you end up feeling worse as a result. It doesn't give you the outcome that you're actually wanting. And so it's important to think about those feelings, but to maybe separate your reaction from those feelings. I just want to share my screen now with a slide that we have. Oh, actually, sorry, Jamie, can you just switch back the host ability to me, please?
No worries.
I'll get the slide ready. Okay. Thank you. So there's the PowerPoint. There it is. Okay. So we have this slide here, this image of different communication styles, and you might recognize these for different people and relationships you have in your life. So there are types such as aggressive communication, passive communication, assertive, and passive aggressive. It's not on here, but we'll talk about each of those. So Harish, can you tell us a bit about aggressive communication?
Sure. So in an aggressive communication style, we may come off as intimidating, critical, and we may raise our voice, and we don't really consider the other person's needs. And so there might be a lot of anger behind what we do, and sometimes that can result in some physical violence as well.
Okay. And how about passive communication?
Passive would generally be categorized as sort of just avoidance and avoiding any sort of confrontation. Usually ends up hurting you more than anyone else, because you're letting others kind of get their way to some degree. It's often quite quiet and less likely to stand up for yourself. So you rarely get what you actually want out of an exchange or out of a relationship, and you're just more vulnerable in that situation where you're kind of letting people dominate you in some aspect. And then there's also passive aggressive, which is a combination, obviously. So it's sort of like avoiding conflict or confrontation, but then doing it in a sort of a sly way or behind people's back, manipulating people, being aggressive but in a subtle way. So ignoring people, undermining them, spreading rumors, being overly sarcastic, joking, making mean jokes, stuff like that.
Yeah. And that if someone was to confront you about it, you might say like, well, it wasn't like that.
You deflect it.
Just a joke or something. Yeah. Okay. And so neither of these options are ideal, because in either way, one of the parties isn't getting their needs addressed, and that's not a very healthy relationship to be in. And so we want to focus now on assertive communication skills, where both people's needs are being met, and it shows respect for yourself and for those other people. So Harish, what can you tell us about assertive communication skills?
So being assertive is about speaking in a way that is open and honest while respecting the other person and also respecting your needs and feelings. Assertiveness is a learned behavior. We're not born with communicating this way. When we are not assertive, it can lead to a low self-esteem because we're not telling other people what we want, and we can be mistreated, and we just keep it to ourselves.
And all that builds up.
That's right.
Over time.
That's right. And you can feel resentful. You may start to avoid that person, avoid that activity. And so communicating assertively helps resolve that situation in a respectful way, and it's mutually beneficial. You get what you want, and the other person learns about what you want, and so that you can both have a better relationship.
I have this point here that you can offer a compromise. Some situations there's no compromise, right? Like boundaries, sometimes there's a hard limit that cannot be crossed. And so when it comes to compromise, it doesn't mean that you just give someone what they want over what you want. That's not a compromise. But you can have a suggestion, or you can kind of negotiate with each other so that both needs are met. Yeah. So I'm just going to stop the screen share for a moment, I think. Okay. So let's go step by step for how you're going to be assertive and communicate with someone.
Okay, so before you approach them, it's a good thing to ask yourself, what do you need? And what does the other person need? And think about how you might have that conversation with them. Think about how the other person would respond. You can think of the worst case scenario. And obviously don't forget to imagine the best case scenario, because it may not always happen, you know, with the worst outcome. And obviously you want to have the ideal outcome in the back of your mind, which is the intention behind starting that conversation.
Because that's what you're doing it for.
That's right.
That
That's
good
right.
outcome.
Yeah. So you can start that conversation by telling the other person what they're doing that is upsetting you. And so you can go, when you do blah, 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 and after that you can say, I feel hurt or disappointed or angry. And then you can offer a compromise. You can say, if you did blah, 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 I will, and offer the compromise, I will spend more time with you, I will continue to be a friend, that sort of thing. So you're offering them a good reason why they should change. You want to be clear and honest, and you want to speak in a firm voice, but not aggressive, because that will put someone off. And it's also helpful not to raise your voice or swear at them, and to avoid anything that's motivated by anger.
Yeah.
Which could be difficult if you're quite emotional about the subject.
Yeah.
Just something to keep in mind, just make
That's
a plan
right.
beforehand.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what can be helpful is if you're noticing you're quite triggered, like you're very upset and you're very angry, to take that time off to settle yourself down, and then come back to that person once you're in a balanced state of mind, so that they don't get the message with anger behind it, and that will
They'll
help
feel
you.
defensive.
Yeah.
Correct.
They'll say, no,
That's right.
don't do that.
That's right. Correct.
All right. I would also add, you know, when you're describing what that person is doing that's upsetting you, to avoid things that are like, you always do this and you never do this, and just because, and instead to pick some specific situations. It's like, when you said this, you know, the other day, and because no one is always this and always that, but definitely can tend to be one-sided. Now I'm just going to share screen again and just show you guys that next bit here. Okay, so we've got some scenarios in front of us. Now, how are we doing for time? Great, we've got half an hour to go. That's great. So we've got 3 scenarios, and we're going to talk through them and think about how that person can set a boundary with someone else. So I'll read this first one. Gemma is 18 years old, and she's been friends with Rachel, who's also 19, for about 6 years. You know, they go back through high school. But Gemma has been feeling like the friendship has become one-sided. Rachel tends to only want to hang out with Gemma or reach out to Gemma when she's needing emotional support or she's in crisis related to her mental health. And Gemma feels like she doesn't get that same support in return. So Gemma feels like she's being used. It's also harming her own mental health. And she doesn't feel as close to Rachel because it feels like Rachel doesn't consider her own needs or what kind of support she needs. So, who wants to go first?
So yeah, some ways to deal with that scenario would be to know, for Gemma to know personally that it's not her, it's not all on her to it's not her responsibility to make sure Rachel is, to dictate how Rachel feels and to always be there for her and make her happy. There's other supports that she could and should be using potentially depending on the situation. Gemma should probably express her boundaries to her, either by text or verbally or on the phone, however she's comfortable, towards the dynamic of how their relationship has developed. Yeah, and potentially if Rachel needs it, she could encourage professional support and let her know that it affects, that Gemma can let her know that it affects her own mental health. So it's a sort of like a not a healthy relationship there, and then she can be aware of it because Rachel might not have been aware of it in the first place.
Yeah. I suppose Gemma can also, like, she doesn't have to get all of her support from her friend Rachel. She, like, if she's finding that her mental health is being impacted, that it's also good for her to think about who her other supports are in her life.
Yeah, exactly.
And reach out to those people and let them know when she's having a tough time so that they can help her out. Yeah, so Harish, like, how specifically could Gemma have this conversation with Rachel?
All right, so using that formula that you can see on your screen, Gemma can start a conversation by going, when you only call me when you need support, I feel frustrated because I think you don't care about what I need. If you could ask me about how I'm going and give me the space to talk about what is going on with me, I would enjoy spending time with you. So then Gemma's expressed what she does not like, how she feels, and she's also put across her request and made a compromise and told Rachel how Rachel will benefit if she changed. The friend that she would be more willing to spend time with her as a friend.
Yeah. And maybe Rachel, maybe she didn't know.
Yeah.
And then this gives her an opportunity to think about it and be a better friend, and feel more confident as well in their friendship.
Yeah.
And it's not about, pointing out that she's being a burden or something, but that, both parties need to feel supported by each other.
Correct.
And that it's a good thing.
And potentially external supports.
That's right. Yeah. Linking in with other supports, counselling, maybe headspace, just to get started. It's something that they could do together as well. Absolutely. Like look into their local centre, get in touch. I think, that would be a good outcome. And of course, the alternative is that Gemma could act aggressively or she could act passively as well. But what's the likelihood of her getting that kind of outcome if she's telling Rachel, like, you don't care about me, and
defensive.
Yep, it could really harm their friendship. And so by going about it in this assertive way, then they're more likely to, find their way to a better place.
Sure.
Which isn't an easy thing to do, but it's the most effective.
Yeah. I would even also tell Gemma, like, she can let Rachel know, like, I care about this relationship, I care about this friendship, and that's why I want to talk about it, because I don't want this to, hurt us. Yeah, exactly. I think that can be a really powerful thing to say.
Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Okay. So we've got another scenario here. I will now read it. So Max, who is 15, and Joe, also 15, they have known each other throughout primary school and they're now at high school together. Recently, Joe has been a bit silly and he got a hold of Max's phone when it was unlocked, and he hacked it and created a post saying that made it look like Max was saying that I'm gay, and apparently it was like a lighthearted joke, and that upset Max a lot because he didn't make that post. It's not about his sexuality, but He's more worried about how people will see that post and take it as serious. And he's worried that some conservative family members might, treat him differently or start talking about him. And it's not something that he wants. It's not something that he chose for himself. Yeah, that's right. So what can Max do to talk to Joe about this? Harish?
Yeah. So Max needs to tell Joe that he found it offensive and that it has crossed his boundaries, and that going through his phone is a massive intrusion of his privacy. And if Max feels uncomfortable about speaking to Joe about this, he can text him and to pass in his message. So I've just had a little think of how he could approach this. So Max can start that conversation by going, Joe, when you posted that status on my account, I felt hurt because some of my family members would judge me for something like that. If you did that again, I wouldn't be able to trust you. So I really appreciate if you don't use my phone to post such things on my account again.
Yeah.
So in this instance, it's the situation is different, and so there isn't really a compromise that I could think of. I feel it was more of a privacy issue where you need a firm boundary, and so you just need to tell that person in a respectful way that's not okay. So yeah.
Yeah. There's no compromise where it's like, you can use my account, but not,
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard line. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So that's the second scenario. And now we have a third scenario. This one is about Geordie. He's 17 and he goes to high school. He plays footy on the weekend, and some of his friends, on the team and at school, they joke around by hitting each other in the balls. And I've seen that a lot around, it seems pretty normal in our culture. For Geordie though, it hurts, and it also makes him feel uncomfortable, and it feels like he's not safe at any time in any place. He's noticed that he's starting to feel anxious when he's heading to trainings and to games, just because of how uncomfortable it all makes him feel. So it's not wrong for Geordie to want this behavior to stop and for his friends to respect his body. He's scared that his friends won't take him seriously, or that they won't care about, his feelings. So what can Geordie do in this situation?
It's likely he may react in the moment, and that will come across aggressively most likely, and wouldn't be the most beneficial, but it's probably better if he were to get just a little bit of time with that friend one-on-one, speak to him and be like, can you just not do that anymore, because I'm not comfortable with it. It's cool. If other people want to do it, that's fine, but I'm not good with it. And if he's a good friend or teammate, then he'll notice that, and hopefully you can both coexist healthily. You could also speak to the coach or a trusted adult in the club. Yeah. And they can maybe address that as a whole, but it really depends on what Geordie would prefer to do. Depends on the individual. Yeah.
Any ideas on how you can have that conversation?
I think, you nailed it there, Zach, with saying that, it just needs to be firm and say, hey, please stop doing that. I don't like it. And that's quite a simple, clear message. Yeah.
For sure. No compromise on that one. Okay, so just time-wise, let's check if there are any questions. We're coming up to the end of the scenarios. We do have one more, but if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them in the Q&A box. I'll just check the chat as well. Okay. Cool. So we do have time for one more scenario, which I have here. So here we go. This is Erica, and she's 15. She's the oldest of 3, so she's got 2 younger siblings, and they all live together with mum. because she's the oldest, you know, mum's a bit strict and has rules around her mobile phone use. Ever since Erica got a phone a few years ago, her mum has always had like access to her password and expects to be able to just unlock Erica's phone whenever she wants to, so that she can go through, like, check her messages, her photos, and her, you know, Snapchat, Instagram. But this is, you know, getting to Erica because she wants to have some privacy. She's thinking that she wants to learn more about mental health, but she's not ready to talk to her mum about it yet. But she's trying to learn about this, but without her mum, without her mum just finding out. And so because of this, she feels like she has to, you know, delete her browser history, that she can't like certain accounts, because she feels like she has to hide, and because she doesn't have any trust with her mum. And so how can Erica talk to her mum about having some privacy?
Depends on the dynamic of Erica and her mum, but if she's able to just speak to her face to face and be stern, assertive, and just be like, I need privacy at this point in my life. What you are doing now currently with your, like, going through my phone and the invasion of privacy is making me trust you less. So I feel like this would not be beneficial for our relationship in general. And it's I'm uncomfortable with it. And I will tell you things when I feel like I can, or I'm able to, or I want to. And currently what's going on is just not beneficial for either of us.
Yeah, that's the compromise, right? Like, if you can give me some space, then I'll feel more comfortable talking to you when I'm having a hard time. And I also want to, like, it's important there for Erica to say that she wants to share with her mom the good things as well. So maybe it'll help if Erica can, you know, send her mum some memes that she likes, or a funny video that's come up, and just keep her mum in the loop with her life, so that her mum doesn't feel like she has to go in and, like, you know, Sherlock Holmes and find all of the stuff that's going on in her life. And that might be something that Erica's mum wants, you know, to just be included, to be involved, and to just be aware about, like, what kind of issues and problems Erica's having. And that's something as well that people can talk to a headspace counsellor about. I do want to remind everyone that, you know, if you are having a situation, a problem in your life, and you're not quite sure how to go about it, and maybe you're having trouble thinking about how you can use these steps in your life, or build up your confidence to be able to have that conversation, that you can talk one-on-one with a counsellor about it. So yeah, let's see.
Which can sometimes be quite necessary in, like, a parent-child relationship, because the power dynamic and reliance is quite difficult.
Yeah, that's right, because it's not like you can just end the relationship, you know, because you live with your parents, they pay your phone bill. Yeah, you still got to go to school and everything. That's actually something else too that you can do at Headspace, is the family sessions. If you wanted to have an appointment with a parent, with a counsellor who can, like, you can say, this is the topic that I want us to talk about today, and that's what the conversation will be about. And so that can be really helpful as well. Sometimes just to have another adult in the room who can help kind of translate between the two of you and identify what your individual needs are, and come to a compromise that works for you both. Okay, so I don't see any questions at the moment, which is fine. Now, we did have that table as well that we can talk about with the different types of boundaries. So we'll point out the fact that there are different types. Like, we've said that there are different places that you set boundaries with other people, but not all boundaries are healthy boundaries. So let's explore that. We've got here, hopefully you can see us still there. Okay. So do you want to speak to this, Harry?
Yeah, sure. So I guess when we think about boundaries, ideally, I mean, so far we've talked about situations where people have weak boundaries, and we've talked about healthy boundaries, but there can be also some situations where people have too much boundaries. And so if you looked at the table in front of you, on that left column, you have rigid boundaries, and some of the signs that someone may have really rigid boundaries is that the person might avoid intimacy, they might avoid close relationships, they might be overprotective of personal information, and they may seem really aloof or detached even from their partners, and they might keep people at a distance because they fear rejection. So having too much boundaries can also get in the way of us being, feeling happy and living a well-rounded, fulfilled life. So if you move on to the next middle part of the table, you can see porous boundaries. So this is something that a lot of people experience as well, where they may overshare information, they may have difficulty saying no to other people when they make a request, they may get over-involved with other people's lives and problems, they may accept disrespectful behavior or abuse from others, and they may fear rejection if they don't listen and obey other people. And that is also unhealthy, and that can result in a lot of negative low self-esteem and a negative image of oneself. And what we're trying to encourage here is to move towards the healthy boundaries, where someone values their own opinions and does not compromise their values to make other people happy, sharing information in an appropriate way, not sharing too much, or the opposite, not sharing too little, knowing what we need and want and communicating it in a way that is healthy, that is respectful, and accepting when others say no to them. So also respecting other people's boundaries, and responding appropriately when they express their boundaries as well.
Definitely, because it's a two-way thing.
Correct.
Isn't it?
That's right.
It's not that only your boundaries are the only ones that matter.
That's right.
But that you've got to respect other boundaries as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was me.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so that's all that we have prepared for the session today. We'll give you another minute if you'd like to include a question. I've got something in the chat. Oh yeah, so just gotta run. All right, thanks for coming. Okay, great. So I just want to go back to these earlier notes. So if this session has brought up anything for you, you can contact Kids Helpline. It's for young people who are 5 to 25 years old, 1-800-55-1800. They've also got a web chat if you go to the Kids Helpline website, and Lifeline as well is 13 11 14. I'll just pop into the chat box. You can look up the Brief Interventions in Youth Mental Health Toolkit. It's a really great resource for young people. I was looking at it just last night. It's got really youth-friendly language and practical steps for thinking about working on your assertive communication skills. There are other topics in there as well about, understanding my feelings, anxiety, exercise, nutrition, sleep as well. And we'll include that link, or you can look up Origin, that's spelled ORYGEN. We also use that toolkit in our group series called Empower Hour. And we run it twice a month. It's a different topic each month. And so our session on communicating assertively is relevant to this topic here. And you can also, you know, check in with your local Headspace centre. If Joondalup isn't your local centre might offer a similar type of group. And you can speak one-on-one with a counsellor about it as well. Let's see if we've covered everything. Don't think so.
Nothing else?
Any other points to make on boundaries?
It can potentially be more difficult than we've portrayed in this short section, but it's something that you just need to work on, and plan, and read
practice.
up on.
Yeah, for me it was
Practice.
definitely like building up my confidence, just asking for things, like just being okay with it. Like I would ask for some extra sauce on my sub at Subway, and people were like, yeah, no problem. And I was like, wow, that was easy. I can now ask for someone to respect my boundaries, you know, like building up skills. That's something that comes up in the toolkit. Actually, they ask you to think about, you kind of rate from not at all comfortable to very comfortable, different situations with strangers, with friends, with an authority figure in your life, like a teacher or a boss. And, you know, when you put them in order of like definitely can do, cannot do, you can start at the bottom and work your way up, right? Because as we said, it's a skill that you practice.
Correct.
You might not get it right every single time. Something else that we were talking about just before was that you can, you know, as we were saying about boundaries, with how it's something that shows other people how to treat you, you can also be active in respecting other people's boundaries as well. And you can demonstrate how through your actions, right? It's like, if I know that I'm not a big person with hugs, that whenever I try to hug someone, I ask them first, like, oh, can I give you a hug? It doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be very formal, like, may I have your permission? But like, yeah, can I give you a hug? And that shows other people how easy it is for them to ask you, can I give you a hug? And you can still say, like, no thanks, I'm not a big hugger, not right now, but give them a little wave or something, for example. Yeah, it like, and same when you want to share, like, unload your feelings, you've had a really rough day, to check in with your friend or your partner or someone, like, oh my gosh, I've had such a bad day, like, can I talk to you about it? Is this a good time? Yeah. And them seeing you do that can help them also know how to ask you about it as well when the tables have turned. I just wonder, like, can you guys think of any situations where you've had to set a boundary and, you know, it's gone the right way, or you didn't expect it to go that way? Sorry, on the spot a little bit.
I have a friend who, like, earlier on when I knew him, I've known him for a few years now, he knew I had quite a lot of anxiety at the time, and especially around like social situations and meeting new people. So he would often be like, he would often ask me, like, I'm doing this, do you want to come? These people will be here though, you won't know these people are kind of, I don't know, this-mannered this way. They're good, or you will get along with them, or you might not, because he knew how, like, my personality and my difficulties. So he would like often be like, he'd either just be like, he'd tell me about it and be like, it's cool if you want to come, or he'd just tell the people sometimes and be like the people at our gathering or something, like certain people would be like, he'd just give them a heads up, you know, that I might be a bit quiet and stuff. And that was always, I appreciated that.
And would you be like, or we can just hang out one-on-one?
Yeah, or yeah, usually we'll just hang out one-on-one back then. But yeah,
awesome.
I thought that was pretty good of him.
Sounds like a great friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And Harish, anything for you?
Yeah, I had a recent situation where, so I have these two friends that I'm close to, and they both have young kids, like they both just gave, you know, they're like 9 months and a year old.
Fresh.
Yeah, so I usually hang out with them but since they've started to have kids, like it's, it's different. Like everything kind of revolves around the kids. And they were going down south for a couple of days, and usually I would go, but I just imagined I wouldn't be enjoying myself as much as I used to, because, we can't do what we usually do. And so I found it really difficult to say no at the start, because I'm really close with them. And they asked me to come. And at first I said yes. And then I could just feel the dread in me the next few days, like just thinking, why didn't I just say no? Because I really can't imagine how I'm going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
And so I did have to, because they came back and told me, okay, well, this is the day and this is the going. I'm like, actually, can I pass? And so I didn't offer a reason. And they came and asked me because, they care. And I said, look, this is hard, but I'm going to be honest. I really love you guys, but I can't imagine spending a whole weekend with the little ones. It's, I really love them, but this is really hard for me. And,
I need space.
I need space. I feel active. I don't want to go out to my own thing. And so maybe when they're a bit older, I can reconsider this. But yeah, and they were really understanding, and they, they accepted it. So yeah, it wasn't as hard as I imagined before when I said no. It's just like I just felt this obligation, and so I guess a reminder to myself that there is no need to feel obligated for anything, and that I have the right to say no.
And that's a good opportunity. When someone offers something, you don't have to say yes or no straight away, or like they could say like, just think about it for a little bit and get back to me, or you can say like, I'll think about that. And I'll let you know, tomorrow or something. And again, like it was okay that you could change your mind afterwards, right? And they're fully respectful.
That's
of that.
often how I react when I'm invited to something. Well, give me some time. I don't know.
I'll weigh up the pros and cons. And that's the thing, thinking, you got to keep in mind that best case scenario and think positively about the outcome. Because where was I going with this? Because like I guess you do tend to think about worst case.
Naturally, we do think about the worst case sometimes.
You want to please other people. You want to have people who want to spend time with you and stuff. But actually, that's right. The positive thing is that a lot of the time people are okay with it. They're like, oh yeah, no problem. And so you might build up this thing where they're going to get mad at you, or they're going to be annoyed, or they're going to think that you're not a good friend. But people are realistic and reasonable generally, and people are okay if it doesn't always go their way. It's part of life. And it's a good thing to expect for others to respect you too. Exactly. They're the kind of people you want in your life.
That's right.
For sure. And we can always learn and change and do better in the future. Awesome. Okay, well, just about to wrap up. Thank you everyone for participating and being part of our conversation about setting boundaries. Hope you have a great day and a great Youth Week 2021, and we'll catch you next time. Oh, actually, tomorrow, Headspace Osborne Park running self-care session, how to make your own self-care kit, and the day after on Wednesday, Headspace Almeda running mental health in your culture. So check those out. Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.